Peace. This is Jamal Robinson with 720astrology.com. I'm back to have another discussion about the upcoming solar eclipse, total solar eclipse in Aries, which will happen tomorrow, April 8th, 2024, beginning at 12:23 p.m. Central Standard Time. You'll need to make adjustments for your time zone. So the title of this discussion is Solar Eclipse 2024, The Blood Revitalized. And I'll do my best as always to make sense of this. To start with, I want to bring up a very helpful teaching tool, well, learning tool first and foremost. And it is a layout of the 8 phases of the moon. Now, this is a representation of the 8 phases of the moon. It's a lot going on here. It's also laying out the 8 holy times of the year. But for our purposes, we're going to look at it relative to how it ties in with the lunar eclipse that we had in Libra and the upcoming total solar eclipse that we're having in Aries. So Aries would be represented over here at 0 because this is Aries. This is the start. So you might be able to see it written faintly, but I'll rewrite it. This is the germ, as in germination or the seed. And Libra would be over here, of course, opposite Aries. And the term associated with Libra is withering. I don't know if this is all getting on the screen, so I'm going to rewrite it over here. Shorthand, we'll just say wither. Now, what this is doing is giving an agricultural or using an agricultural template to explain the movement throughout the zodiac. And I love it because it makes it very simple to understand how energy evolves and devolves. We have a seed, Aries. It is potentiality. It is initiation. It is undeveloped self. It's raw identity. It's like taking oil directly out of the earth, unrefined. Well, by the time we get to the seventh house, which is naturally occupied and associated with Libra, that germ, that initial seed, has gone through a process of sprouting. It has grown and it has matured. And once it matures and we get over towards the sixth house, which is Virgo's house, we got to do the work. And what's the work? Harvesting. We're harvesting the matured seed, which is now a fruit that has ripened on the vine. But if we don't harvest it, that fruit will rot on the vine. So after we harvest, we then take it to the market. Now, the thing about fresh food is that by the time it gets to the market, it is basically withering, which is the whole purpose of bringing fresh foods to the market, because now we know time is ticking because it's off the vine. Once the food leaves the vine, it is in the process of withering. But we get it to the market before it actually shows the signs of decay because it still has a window. The full moon that occurred in Libra was the withering phase of the fruit. And what goes on between the withering and the emergence of a new seed is that we have to go from withering to death, because the death is the fruit has been exchanged for currency and now it's going to be eaten and it's going to become one with the receiver of the fruit. And then by the fruit giving up its life, it then creates life or regenerates because its nutrients go on to support life. So then there's that whole death, burial, and resurrection theme that is very relevant right now, given the season we're in. And then after the fruit dies and is transformed, then there's a process of dormancy. The dormancy is, and not to be too vulgar, but once that fruit has been eaten and digested, it leaves the body as waste. And we're imagining that that waste now then goes to fertilize new ground, but initially it's just dormant under the earth. The contracted earth is dormant. This is Capricorn. Then, as we start to transition into winter and the latter stages of winter, the seed is starting to warm up. In other words, the ground is starting to warm up so that it can support new life. And all of this is preparing for what? For germination, for new seed to be sown. The phase we're in right now is in between the withering of Libra and the new germination of Aries. So from March 25th up until tomorrow, April 8th, we're in that phase of maybe letting go of things, letting go of fears, letting go of self-doubt, letting go of old habits that have been holding self back, closing out old cycles, releasing so that new life can emerge. That's the purpose. And this is the devolution because Aries is the rising sign, which naturally suggests evolution. Libra is the sign of fall, which is devolution. But devolution is just as important as evolution because devolution helps to complete the circle. And that's a perfect segue into the next thing we need to talk about. Aries, of course, is the sign naturally associated with the rising house of the zodiac. So Aries is naturally associated with rising. And where does the sun rise? In the east. Love to use Hebrew as a reference point. That is a kaf, that is a dalet, and that's a mem final. And this is kadam, and this is one of the Hebrew words for east. But this that I've spelled out has a numeric value of 144. And mystically, there's a lot of significance around the 144,000. Cognate is ancient. This is the meaning, another meaning. Ancient, as in the great old ones. And so ancient then coincides with the word truth because the truth has always been. So this gives more helps us to more shape and focus in on the energy around this solar eclipse, total solar eclipse. What is the truth? What has always been there will always be there, and it will rise. What is the truth that is rising for you? And then we know metaphysically that the East represents the heart. What is rising from the heart? What is in your heart? What is in your heart is your truth. It's interesting that this letter Kaf, if you go back to the video I did on 111, and I break down the Hebraic symbolism and meanings of the number 1, the number 10, and the number 100. Now, the letter Kaf has a numeric value of 100 in Hebrew. And in that video, I talk about the symbolism, especially around this stem here, this long stem. Kaf is the only non-final letter in Hebrew that has this long stem. And this stem, symbolically, we could say is boring a hole because the kaf in Hebrew means whole, complete, whole, comma, complete. And so in alignment with that meaning, we take symbolic liberty and say that this long stem is boring a hole, and that hole can be the eye of the needle or the hole that allows the handle to attach to an axe. The eye of the needle, what we use a needle for? To mend. What do we use an axe for? To break up, to destroy. And so this kaf is powerful. It also has a symbolic association with the zero because the zero is nothing and everything at the same time. So it is the creator or the mender, as in the eye of the needle, and the destroyer all in one. It's the circle of completion, which involves the destruction, devolution, and construction, evolution. These are just themes to think about unfolding right now. All this energy around this total solar eclipse in Aries. Where are we at right now? Individually, in your walk, are you in a space where you need to tear something down? If so, then it's nothing to lament over because things need to be torn down at some point. Why? Because we have to tear down an old structure in order to build a new one. Are you in a place where you feel like things have been getting torn down for a long time, for a while, and you've been clearing out some things, clearing out some karma? Well, it could be very well, could be time to start mending and building something. Each of us is at different stages in our individual cycles. But even as you are tearing down, you are building. Even as we build, we're preparing for the next tear down because that's what happens. Our bodies, at a cellular level, I think they say it recreates itself every 7 years. We're constantly building and tearing down. That is what keeps this expression of life that we understand in balance, in harmony. When we go back to the word cottom that we started with, which is the pe or the kaf, I'm sorry, the dalet and mem final. When we remove the kaf, we're left with a dalet and the mem. And you know what that is in Hebrew? Blood. All power exists in the blood because when we put that kaf back in the front and it adds up to 144, and we're talking about complete, whole. We're talking about ancient of days, the great old ones. We're talking about something that has always been in the blood. The blood is the interface. The kaf is also the multiple, the two times, I'm trying to think of the right way to say it, but it is 10 to the second power, I guess, to the aleph. In other words, you take the aleph, multiply by 10, you have a yud. You take the yud and multiply by 10 again, you now have the kaf. So the aleph is divine force. The yud is knowledge of it, which is spirit. And then kaf is the potential realized, which is wholeness, to return back to that which one comes from. And it's interesting that as a sidebar that the eclipse, everyone's talking about this X, and the X has dual symbolism as the aleph and as the ta, because one of the more prehistoric ways it is said of writing the ta is like this. This is how the contemporary way. But the Paleo Hebraic version here looks similar to how the aleph is written. This is an aleph, and that's the ta, both involving the X. The aleph is the beginning, and the ta is the end, alpha and omega. So there's a lot of energy here around completing a cycle. Several cycles are at play right now. Several, but we're just looking individually right now. We're thinking individually. We're looking back, especially over the last 19 years, and see what cycle may or cycles we may be completing. But again, all power is in the blood because the blood is the place of where we interface. Interface what? Divinity and humanity. That's where they interface, in the blood. Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars and Aries are associated with iron. And iron is necessary to make red blood cells, which have the job of oxygenating the body because the oxygen in the blood is then goes out to saturate the tissue with oxygenated blood. Oxygen relate to breath, and breath relates to spirit, and spirit is animation. Man was formed but had no life until spirit or breath was blown into it. So we're thinking now about the revitalization of the blood at a metaphysical level. And a physical, how do we revitalize the blood as we complete this last cycle and we're moving into a new cycle? How do we reinvigorate and revitalize the blood? I want to give you some things here that deal with the blood physically and metaphysically. Some things to consider to help with the health and fortitude of the blood. Massage therapy, meditation, prayer, nutrition, exercise, grounding, intentional imagination, right action, right action. Water, channeling ancestors because your ancestors live in your blood. The right use of courage, multiminerals, hormone consciousness, intentionally being conscious of shifts in your hormones that impact your blood and impact your behavior, your health, and everything else that is you are indirectly connected to. Visualization. Visualization goes along with imagination. They're both basically the same. So that's redundant. So visualization slash imagination. Intentionally seeing something with your mind's eye because your blood is the audience that is viewing the movie that you're playing in your head. And if that movie is failure, then the blood records that into its psyche. If your movie is courage and will, healthy will and forward thrust, then that is what is viewed by the blood audience and it is recorded in that cytoskeleton. In each cell, it gets recorded. And what we record in this blood has a lot to do with how the next 19 years play out. Massage helps to move the blood. Meditation helps to still the blood. Prayer helps to comfort the blood. Nutrition and mineral supplementation give the blood the necessary star power that it needs. Exercise invigorates the blood. It's like boot camp for the blood so that the blood can be better suited to take on the challenges that will come because life takes our blood to the battlefield. Intentional imagination and visualization empower the blood. Action directs the blood. Water gives the blood the vital substance it needs, the mana. Channeling ancestors also helps to direct the blood because they live there in our blood. Cognizance of our hormones helps to rationalize the blood. We need all of this. We need all hands on deck because there's a subtle encroachment going on right now into the blood. That's the battlefield. A book I want to recommend, and it's called Secrets of Your Cells by Sandra Barrett, PhD. She is a biochemist and an immunologist. This is the book. So I took a couple of notes down relative to this book or from this book. Things to think about. With Aries, one of the key words for Aries is identity. Identity coincides with personality. Personality means mask or facade. Facade means face. So Aries deals with the face, the identity. Each cell has a face, protein signatures that distinguish one from another. That's Aries. Each cell has characteristics that indicate its origin and function. Aries. When cells touch, their identification markings enable them to distinguish self, Aries, from other, Libra. In addition to physical attributes, cells recognize each other by vibration. Vibe with your tribe. You know, that was a real popular thing, I don't know, a couple years ago. Vibe with your tribe. But it's a real thing. From that phase of withering, Libra, like some relationships literally dissolved around the lunar eclipse. It's internal. How do we feel about these things? How do we feel about how we show up or how others shows up or how I feel when I'm around other? So some relationships literally dissolved. For some, it's the way we viewed relationship as an institution that dissolved. But either way, it was in preparation for a reemergence in Aries. Now, the question is this: what have we learned over the last 19 years? Because everything's for naught if there has not been any education. What have we learned since the full moon, the last full moon? Because all of that goes into how this vibration emits out from self, or a vibration, however we want to label it. What are we sending out from ourselves out into the world? Things to think about. This is a quote from her book. The ID signatures on one cell are detected by decoding receptor sites on another cell's surface. The patterns or shapes of the two cells' markers fit together like a lock and key. So here's the thing again about self and relationship. If that cell has been properly identified, what's that old saying? Man, know thyself. How can there be union with anyone else when I don't know myself? And if relationship after relationship fails, it can't always be the problem is the other person, because there's got to be a lack of knowledge somewhere to where if whatever you're attracting you don't like, why do you keep attracting it? So at a cellular level, we see that there's an importance of proper identification, Aries, so there can be proper reception, Libra. Here's one that really cooked my noodle. The cells give off a scent, which affects attraction. Now, here's the deal. Physically, Mercury would deal with the physical olfactory principles of smell, because Mercury is dealing with the rational, the mechanics, the nervous system. What are the components involved in smell? But Venus deals with the reception, the pleasant reception of smell. When I smell something that is pleasing, or Venus deals with what we don't like. I smell something that doesn't agree with me. All of this is occurring within the blood. Even how we attract, we must go to a subtle level to deal with ourselves. Who we are, how do we identify? We have to go to a subtle level. Everything is so superficial. It's 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 all about the facade. That was my daddy's favorite word before he transitioned. He always talked about the facade, the facade. And he and I would watch those old cowboy westerns, and they would have the facade up on those buildings. Grand face on the building, but behind it is just an old rundown little half rotten structure. But we at least want to put up this image. But what you attract goes beyond just the image we try to put up. It is the real energy that we're putting out. That's the real Aries. What am I emitting? Things to think about with this upcoming total solar eclipse, where momentarily what we see is blocked out. What is the truth? Because that which is true goes nowhere. That which is built on lies, there may be some things to worry about. Are you a lie? Are you the truth? My favorite comedian is Patrice O'Neal. God rest the transition. And the documentary they put out on him, Dane Cook says when he met Patrice O'Neal in like 91 or 92, Patrice O'Neal was sitting back there listening to a bootleg Notorious B.I.G. tape. And they were both young, starting out in comedy. And he remembers Patrice O'Neal saying, be the truth, man. Nobody can fuck with the truth. And see, Patrice O'Neal is a Sagittarius. Sagittarius is about philosophy and the truth, at least their truth. Sagittarius may be wrong, but they're going to be wrong in the truth that they think is right at the moment. And he said, man, be the truth. They can't fuck with the truth. So I know there's a whole lot of stuff going on in the news. There's all types of everything. They're going to shoot missiles up in the air, and CERN is firing up, and they're going to do this. They're going to do. Be the truth. You can't fuck with the truth. For private readings, I'm available through my website, 720astrology.com. Know the stars to know yourself. Peace.